Hey everyone, I hope that you are well. My name is Sonal Dave, and I'm an award winning celebrant, Toastmaster, and public speaking expert. I was hoping to be interviewing someone today, but circumstances have changed, and that happens in life all the time. So, what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to answer some of the questions that people have been coming directly to me with about the journals. And hopefully, they are also questions that other people have been asking themselves and just didn't reach out to ask me. So, first of all, there is a journal for adults, and it's called The Neurodivergent Mind. And that's adults who have a neurodiverse condition themselves, or it could be an adult who's looking after a child or an adult with a neurodiverse condition. So it could be either of those. And then, if you can see in the background in a greeny color, there is Write It, Read It, Let It Go. And that's the children's version of the journal. Alongside the journals, there is also a notebook, and both are matched in terms of colors so that the branding stays the same. So, an adult version and a child version. Now, I've also been asked the question, well, hold on, which one should we get? So, really, to be very honest and transparent, the content of both journals is the same. That is why they are both priced the same, as it would seem wrong to give them different prices. So the content is the same, the covers are different, but what you do with the inside, which I will show you very shortly, can be used in different ways. What was another question that I was asked? Oh, I was asked in terms of the children's journal, what age group should the children's journal start at? Now, it's an interesting one because I would have probably said 7 or 8 years old, but I think it's very much down to the parent or the carer, the adult carer, who will have more of an idea of when is the best time that the child would be journaling. So it doesn't mean they couldn't be doing it earlier, but they may just need some support from an adult or a carer. So those two questions. Oh, and you wanted to have a little bit of a look inside, and I will do a little bit of this tomorrow as well. So when you open the book, and I'm hoping that you can see some of it, there's a little bit about the book and the copyright. There is a little bit about me, that picture that many of you have seen already. And then I also have a section in here on how to use the journal. So it's very simple steps to help you through. And I've kept in here one of my favorite quotes, which I use all the time: dare to dream, dare to be different. The world is your stage. And then we have a mandala. And the mandala is for you to color in, scribble in, doodle in, write around, scribble around, doodle around. It's really your page to do what you want to do with it. And we then move, oh, and in between, there's always some lovely quotes. This one is, "Today I will be my best self." Okay. And then the bit that I know everyone wanted to see was, what does the actual day look like? The double page spread that I keep talking about. So here's an example. So across 2 pages, there are boxes, and in each box, you can write in them, you can draw in them, you can doodle in them, whatever it is that works for you, whether that's you as an adult with a neurodivergent mind, or whether that's your child, or it could be that it's a child you know, so maybe within the family. So it's their place to use in a way that works for them, because we're not all the same. And each neurodivergent individual is different. So, but it's there in a kind of structure: what happened, when, where, why, how, what part of it was due to your actions, how did it make you feel? Angry, sad, happy, scared? Because this is all about sharing good days and also not so good days. And then importantly, what can you do about it? Do you share it with somebody? Do you write more about it? But it's up to you. It's your journal, whether that's as an adult or whether it's the child journal. And as I mentioned, there's also a notebook that goes with it as well. And then throughout the journal, there are mandalas, there are quotes, there are more day pages, and then there's a little space at the background as well, at the back of the journal, sorry, and it's a place for you to do what you want to do. You could create something arty, you could write something down as well. It's really up to you. Well, I'm really pleased to say now that I've answered all of your questions, and if you do have any others, just reach out to me because it's very important that I do answer your questions so that you can make a decision as to whether you wish to buy the journal for yourself, for your child, or maybe as a gift for somebody else as well. Well, I can see in the waiting room there is an absolutely beautiful lady waiting to join us. And I am not going to say too much because I want her to take the opportunity to tell you all more about who she is. I'm going to invite her onto the screen.
Hello.
Hello, Louise. Thank you so much for joining me today.
No problem.
And the first question is, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Louise Smith. I'm based in Cheshire, but not the posh part, unfortunately. And I am an independent celebrant, which I have been for 6 years now, predominantly working in funerals. And I've found from a sort of neurodivergent perspective that it's been the first job really that I've felt I want to stay in. I mean, I think self-employment is a big part of that because you're kind of working to your own schedule and that sort of thing. But it is. It's. I think a lot of ND people need to have a real passion for what they do in order to get them through it. And celebrancy for me is that.
So people who are watching now, and maybe some people who'll be watching afterwards, may be thinking, what is a celebrant? Do you want to take a moment to tell people what a celebrant is?
Absolutely. Just on that note, a friend of mine, if people asked what I do, he would say, she's a celebrant. What? Because that was the general consensus if anyone says celebrant. It's definitely becoming more widely known now than it was even when I started. But effectively, I write personal funeral services and wedding services mostly. That really encapsulates the person that we're talking about and celebrating. So most of my funeral services tend to be more of a celebration of life rather than the kind of more traditional, I suppose, service, although I do absolutely do those as well. And for me, it's just lovely to be able to get to know that person, get to, hear the funny stories and hear the little anecdotes and the fact that he never went anywhere without a cup of tea in his hand, and just the little things that I just believe are so much more important than the CV that you often used to get in more traditional services.
No, I agree. And in fact, it's one of the reasons why I love being a celebrant myself, that whether it's for me, it's, a wedding or a funeral, just that moment where you get to know the family, you get to know more about, if it's a funeral, the person who's passed away, or if it's a wedding, the couple and their story. I've not found a job that's been close to this at all, where I've thought, I like this. This is my safe place. So totally understand when you say, being a celebrant, there's the celebratory side of it, but there's also the humanity, the human factor.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to move on to a little bit of some of the questions that I've asked some of my other people that I've interviewed as well. And when you look out there in life and you see everything that's going on, what do you see as maybe one or two of the big challenges that society is facing at the moment?
I'm conscious of not being too political, but I do feel that the jobs that involve real dedication and care and people are really undervalued, certainly financially. And I think, I think care work, especially elderly care, is a perfect example. Teaching is another one. Even our job, to a certain degree, I feel like there's a lot of jobs out there where you're dependent upon to care. And because you do it because you care, people maybe don't value that financially in general. And I think that that's something that we're really missing as a society, really, like that value in interpersonal relationships and the things that on a sort of one-to-one basis even just makes such a difference. That's probably my biggest one at the moment.
You know, it's quite interesting you say that, because I remember having conversations with my friends about how during the pandemic, it really came to light about who really were the most important people to keep this country going. You know, whether it was nurses, doctors, carers, funeral directors, celebrants, supermarket workers, you know, doctors, pharmacists. I
Transport.
mean, transport, you know, the list, ambulance staff, fire brigades, you know, the list is endless. And actually, and again, trying not to be too political either, it was lovely that they sat in their ivory towers, but the real happenings happened, you know, on the ground, boots on the ground, as we say, including all those hundred thousands of volunteers who got involved with vaccinating. I
Absolutely.
you know, I have no idea whether they got anything for it or even a thank you letter or anything, but it definitely, to me, showed that the politicians needed to really reevaluate what the priorities were and actually who was really running the country or keeping it
Absolutely. And the
going.
reliance on the charity sector as well. You know, the fact that food banks are literally like given to people as part of a package of welfare. It's like that's not that's not being paid for, that's charity.
Absolutely. And if you also, I mean, again, we're not going to get too political, but how many charity organizations kind of, you know, pulled up their sleeves and got their wellies on, and, you know, they were cooking and delivering food up and down the motorway and making sure people had food and, you know, warm food, not just food, but
Yeah.
warm meals and good meals that had kind of the carb, the protein, you know, the salad, that it wasn't just out of a tin. And that was, again, it was all charity and volunteers in the charity
Mhm.
that would just wanted to help. And it
That's it.
just sometimes make you think that priorities are a little bit askew.
Indeed,
It,
indeed.
um, so you shared with me about your neurodiversity, and I don't know how much you have shared publicly, and I thank you for, first of all, sharing it with me, but also then coming on to be interviewed, because it's quite interesting the different people that I am meeting who have a neurodiverse condition where I wouldn't have even known if they hadn't told me. And if
Yeah,
you hadn't told me, I wouldn't have known. And that's just me being really honest.
absolutely. No,
So
that well, I didn't know for 36 years. So it's not just from the outside looking in until you sort of realize actually what it means. You don't even know yourself.
so what made you want to go and find out what was happening?
I mean, without going, not that I mind going into detail, but I don't think it's necessarily the place. My mental health has been pretty shocking for a very, very long time. I've been on every antidepressant under the sun. I had a job at one point which had healthcare. I had 2 inpatient stays in a private hospital for my depression. It's been a really, really tough road. And I think a lot of that just came down to just I knew something wasn't right. Like not necessarily wasn't right, but there was something I didn't understand. And all of the therapists and all of these private healthcare psychiatrists and nobody knew about it. And I think, I mean, for me, because I have ADHD, it's really starting to be, raising awareness is massive at the minute on this, which is part of the reason I think that I'm where I am right now. But certainly for women with ADHD, which is all I can really speak to, it's explained everything that I thought was wrong with me as a person, like as a personality flaw, or just not being as good as everybody else, or just being lazy, and all of these things that I think basically accounted for my depression because I just couldn't understand what was so wrong with me. And again, in public, absolutely fine, like nobody would know. But life is really, really hard. And I think knowing why is just then opens this whole new world of strategies and research and help, but you need to know that in order to access it.
And it's quite interesting you share your story, because quite a few people who have reached out to me since I've started talking about neurodiversity, and my starting to talk about it is not because I have been diagnosed, but because of my friends or friends' children, and they've been talking about it, and because I am very keen on public speaking, and I have a public speaking strategy where I want to find ways for not just neurotypical, but neurodiverse, people with disabilities, and any other category that we might choose to put people in, to find a way to be able to say what they need to say, share what they're feeling, what's happening to them, in a way that they can get the right help, and not just here's some pills, and off you go, which is the story I've heard quite a few times. So what you've shared kind of resonates with the stories that I've heard as well. But now that you know, what difference does that make to you and your life now?
I am kinder to myself, I think. I am learning still massive. Like, I am so early on this road in terms of really understanding this. It's been about a year, no, a bit over a year, beginning of last summer, when I read an article and I just had a light bulb moment. Like, I've never ever had a moment like that where I was just like, oh my, like, this explains everything. And then sort of a year of questioning myself, and is this an excuse, and all of the things that I think a lot of us are trained to believe. And then sort of, I mean, it's only been 2 months since I've had my official diagnosis. So it's just, I think, I mean, I'm already getting like losing the question. This is what I do. But I think the biggest thing really is I'm being kinder to myself, and I'm understanding why the problems that I have and where they're rooted in, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And when you're going out talking to other people, in the community, other women, what kind of reactions are you getting from them?
I am really good at talking to people in person, in, you know, whoever they might be. I suppose with the celebrancy thing, that's part and parcel. And I'm very open. I mean, all the way through, really, like through my teens, even certainly through my 20s, I was very open about my mental health. So in that regard, it's been very easy to just kind of keep talking about it. But one thing, which is actually, I think, how we really connected, because I was familiar with you through work, but I do not have a social media presence at this point. And one of the things that I really am trying to build myself up to do is share more publicly, and start looking at speaking engagements, because the more people know, just the better the world is going to be, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I saw something recently, and TikTok is this whole new world for me. I mean, I'm 36 and I feel like a dinosaur when it comes to TikTok.
What's the other one they do?
Yeah, see, I'm just like, okay, that's the thing. But yeah, my friends have been sharing some videos with me that are, you know, these really quick, sort of broken down, little sort of, I don't know, like just little explanatory videos or silly videos. And there was one recently that was talking about hidden disabilities. And it described it as how in a video game you'd have like a stamina bar. And you know, we can do the same things as everybody else can do. And I say we, I'm still learning in terms of, I'm mostly speaking about myself. But the things, you know, where having a shower might even like not affect a neurotypical person's energy bar, it'll take a third off my day some days. It's the capacity that it takes to do things just takes so much. And then when you try and, you know, run your own business and live on your own and cook and all of these other things, it's just feels like an enormous mountain every day. But kind of understanding why I feel like that, I really do feel is the key to working the way through it, really.
And I think I was talking to a lady earlier today, not on an interview, but just who had reached out to me, and she was sharing with me that the moment she found out what the condition was, she was able to then do her own research, work
Mm-hmm.
out what was going to help, not the doctors, but herself, work
Oh,
out, yeah, what was going to work for her, and trial and error with different things until
mm-hmm.
she's now found she's got a way to manage her day.
Mm-hmm.
She was saying there are some days where she just knows she'll be lucky if she has a cup of tea and a slice of toast. And
Yeah.
then there'll be other days where she could probably write the Queen's Speech and put two laundries on and go shopping and do lots of other things as well. So I do think it's one of those things where even doctors don't necessarily fully understand it themselves. So you're almost having to try and work out what it might be and saying to them, do you think, do you think it
That's
might be
it.
this?
And actually, from my sort of diagnosis process, I contacted my old consultant from the private healthcare and all my depression, and I approached him with this stuff, and I did not feel confident that I felt confident in myself that I had ADHD, but because my sort of go-to has always been, no, 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 it's not that, you're just, negative self-talk. I needed someone to say, no, this is what it is. Let's go through. And that wasn't available unless it was a real specialist.
Mm,
And that costs money, which I have got on a credit card. It's so scary that there's so little knowledge. But at the same time, it's exciting that it's starting to be out there. I just
absolutely.
feel like all of the I've never been good with anger. I'm still trying to find anger. But the anger that I could have at all of this time that I spent in hospital with supposedly well, not supposedly, these very expensive private professionals that couldn't see this, and try and channel that into other people learning earlier. Because the hardest thing is breaking your habits. And I've got habits that I've had. I mean, I've been masking my symptoms for 20 plus years. And breaking that is a lot harder the longer you've been doing it. And, I can't, I see these people that are, twice my age that are being diagnosed. And I just think, God, it's been bad enough for me, like this long. But again, I think it's exciting that people are getting there now.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting because growing up, I mean, I didn't hear about, hadn't heard the word neurodiverse or neurodivergent, didn't hear it growing up. And then
Mhm,
when I did start to hear about it, when I first started working, it was very much to children
mhm,
being diagnosed. There wasn't even a concept that an adult could be. And then I remember when adults started to get diagnosed, and then work had to do like the work assessment so that they
mhm.
could, whether it was coming in
Yeah, they
later
had like
and
reasonable, I forget the word, but
reasonable
adjustments, that's
adjustments. Yeah.
the one.
Um, and then I thought, wow, this is real. Like this is actually, um, it's not just children, it's adults as well. And like you said, it's not just adults in the target group of 20 to 30. It's all adults right through to, and in fact, God, I wish I could remember the name. I was reading something and there was an article in there about how a grandma had only realized that what she'd been dealing with through her life was ADHD when her grandchild got diagnosed, and she felt
So
that's what I've
common.
been dealing with all my life. So, oh,
I
but
think certainly in women, I mean, I don't have the like data for this, but certainly in women, most of this sort of diagnosis has come through their children, and then the genetic, because ADHD certainly, and autism as well, are so genetically based.
mm,
It just stands to reason that there's links there. And even with my dad, like my dad doesn't have anywhere near as sort of severe issues as I do, but I see the traits now, and I'm like, okay, this makes sense.
yeah, no, it's funny, isn't it, in hindsight, how, hindsight is your best friend, as they say, so you sort of like, oh, that's what it was. I wish I'd known then. But unfortunately, we don't have any time machines currently viable. But I think the more and more, we are talking about it, the more and more we are getting others to talk about it and share their stories. And actually being more open, and that's kind of where the journal for me came
Mhm.
into fruition, because as I was talking to friends and colleagues and they were telling me about their stories, what it did was it made me quickly decide who was going to be my focus group. So
Yeah.
my focus group was quickly adults who had a neurodiverse condition, or adults who were dealing with children, or an adult who had a condition, medical people who were dealing with um, individuals who had a condition. So there was a good makeup of people who were so critical in making sure that what was created in the journal was going to be something that was user friendly, because
Absolutely.
I had looked at other journals and it was kind of like just space for them, to do
Yeah.
something. And everything I'd read and everything I'd been told had said no structure, give them some structure, make it easier for them. They may not fill in every box, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
I think
Um,
that reminds me a little bit of, I don't know if anybody else has felt this, but since sort of Spotify and the streaming platforms, I never know what to listen to, because you've suddenly got the entire world of music, whereas before you had however many CDs, that was your limit. You've got something to choose from. And I think it's the same thing. Like if you give somebody a big empty page like that, I mean, that to me, instantly, I'm like, oh, like,
yeah,
so that the structure just makes sense. It seems like a really
yeah.
good idea.
And even just the flow of the questions. So I know we played around with the flow of the questions, I think, 4 or 5 times, going backwards and forwards before we were happy that it actually, and then we actually got it tested. Had a little kind of user testing as well before we kind of formally said, "Yep, we can print." Because I thought, there's no point printing it and having it on Amazon if it's not actually going to help and
No,
work.
absolutely, absolutely. And I love that, because I remember I was listening, I'm a big podcast person. I was listening to a podcast a few years ago now, and it was about disability in general. And at the time, I had no idea that that was what I had. And I remember hearing the phrase "nothing about us without us," and it's something that is being used, I think, sort of in the sort of parliamentary side of things at the moment. And just people, I think even like the Paralympics was a great example. It was like, hang on a minute, how about we ask the people that are going to be affected by this whether it's going to work? And that's where that phrase "nothing about us without us" came from. And I think that's perfect, and that's clearly what you're doing, which makes me very happy.
Oh, thank you. And to me, it was important because I'm not the one that's going to be helping a child to complete it,
Mhm.
or I'm not the one that's going to be filling it in. Although saying that, I do have a physical and a hidden disability, and actually, I can see myself filling this in
Mhm.
on my good days and my not so good days. Although interestingly, I was talking earlier about journaling, and just through research finding out there's different type of journaling styles. So there is the written,
Mhm.
there is the drawing, there is the doodling, there's probably more. And I'm a kind of a vocal journaling person. So my
Mhm.
two dogs, bless them, and my husband, bless him, have to say, "Guess what happened today? You'll never believe." And then yeah, that person was there. Yeah, it was a bit busy at the time, but and suddenly it's like I'm journaling my day, but I'm
Yeah.
vocalizing it as opposed to writing it down. So I think you've just find the best route for you, that works for you, because we're all so different. And I think there's nothing wrong with being different. In fact, let's celebrate difference, um,
Absolutely.
but find a way as individuals as to what feels right for you.
And I think certainly, sort of from my perspective, I find that I'm scrabbling around so much to keep up, to keep on top of all of the things that I need to do, that to sit down and actually go, hang on, how have I felt today, is really useful. Regardless of whether you look back on it or not, just that actually doing it and getting into the habit of doing it. I certainly think it's something I would benefit from. It's just a case of making myself do it, which is one of the things I'm trying to learn.
To-do list. I've now got some very there's a question I wanted to ask you before I ask you these other questions. How excited are you about the launch? Are you excited as I am? I'm going around
Yeah,
going,
I'm
woo!
really looking forward to it.
And I just no, it's just when it's been sitting on the vision board for a while, and then we had the pandemic, and then I got ill with the COVID stuff and everything that happened. So it's just so exciting that
Oh,
when
honestly, just
you can
finally see something coming from it all. Absolutely.
hold it and it's real,
Oh,
it's not just virtual. So these questions, and if you don't know, or you're not sure what the answer is right now, just say I haven't really thought about it. So,
mhm.
what is your favorite animal?
Oh my
And
goodness. Okay, go on.
and
Sorry, that's not
and
the sort of question I was expecting. Go on.
is there a reason why?
I like cats. Is a sort of I just like the independent nature of them. I am a massive animal person in general, so it's not just cats. But I love the fact that they can come in and have a lovely cozy house and then go out and hunt and do whatever they want, and they've got no rules. They can sleep all day if they want to, but then they'll go out and have whatever it is that they do and nobody knows. And same in the wild, really. Yeah, I think cat would be my answer.
And I kind of see where that comes from, because the independency side of it,
Oh yeah.
survivors, independent, absolutely. I think I know the answer to this next question, because you've already hinted at it in earlier when you were talking. So if you could do one thing to change the world to be a better place, what would it be?
Yeah, same thing, really. I mean, I would just like people to be able to afford to live, to be honest. That would be a really nice start.
Agree, and I think it's such an important one right now, that all we're hearing is about up, prices up, interest rates up, energy prices up, food prices up. I mean, can somebody just say something is coming down, just to
Yeah.
give people hope? I think we're all sort of sitting there hoping, or waiting for someone out there to give us some hope, and hopefully that will come soon, she says, with her fingers
I'm,
crossed.
I am getting a lot of hope actually from Gen Z. And that just the way people are just opening their eyes a little bit more. Capitalism is looking slightly less shiny, as I think it has for most of history, and that does give me hope.
No, that's lovely. And then the final question: who is your favorite superhero, and why?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, oh, okay. My my favorite superhero is actually Spider-Man. And I think the recent movies are the only ones where I've gone, that's Spider-Man. I love the sort of friendly neighborhood, sort of just looking out for people, kind of seeing things through quite innocent eyes in some ways. Um, I love that community spirit. I suppose he'll go off and fight the big battles when he needs to, but he also is a home. He's looking after the people around him.
Oh, I love that answer, and it's so very true, isn't it? I think with all the superheroes, they're out fighting battles, saving, communities and society and individuals, but then they all retreat. Because I mean, even if you look at Batman, he was quite an introvert, wasn't he? And then it was only when he put on his mask and the rest of his outfit
That's
did
it.
suddenly this hero
I have
come
to
out.
say though, the feminist in me is screaming right now that I couldn't come up with a better female superhero off the top of my head, but I do like Spider-Man.
See, the only one I could think of was Catwoman. Oh, and Wonder
Wonder
Woman.
Woman.
Catwoman and
Yeah.
Wonder Woman were the only two that I could think of. So,
Yeah, there's a few new ones coming up now, finally. But yeah.
brilliant. Louise, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me here this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure interviewing you, getting to know you better. And I'm so sure that what you've shared today is going to resonate with so many other people, either whether they're watching it now or whether they'll be watching it later. I'm just going to retire you to the waiting room. I'm going to say
Thank
my
you so
byes,
much.
and then we will have another chat. I will
Thank
speak to you
you.
soon. So that was Louise Smith, who is a celebrant and sharing her story of how for years doctors thought it was mental health when actually, after doing some research herself and just reading and trying to find out more, she realized it wasn't that. It was actually that she had ADHD. And how once that diagnosis came, and that was only 2 months ago, that she's now having to find a way to manage life for herself. And it's got to be a way that she is comfortable with, because none of us can tell each other how we should be managing our lives. It's for us to choose what works for us. So, a big thank you to Louise for joining me today. Again, I just want to say thank you to you all for taking the time to be with me during these interviews. I really do hope that you found them useful and found the information that's being shared really interesting and food for thought. And I'd really challenge you to go out into your families, your communities, and have these conversations. It's so important that we have open, honest, transparent conversations where people feel comfortable enough to tell you if they have a neurodiverse condition. Thank you so much for being on, and I will look forward to speaking to you all tomorrow. Bye now.